Hey guys, Sleeeky ratings on YouTube. This is going to be a more in-depth look at the show Dexter and the overall series of Dexter. Dexter is a phenomenal show. I'm just going to start off like that. So Dexter takes place right in a POV version of a serial killer. Spoiler alerts, by the way. It takes place in the viewpoint of Dexter Morgan. And if you haven't seen the show, I highly recommend it. The original Dexter show is about 8 seasons long. What they did was at the end, they kind of made it left like they can create another show. The 8th season kind of was it was kind of mid. I'm just gonna be honest, and a lot of people would agree that it was kind of mid. Like it wasn't as like Game of Thrones last season bad, but it was not the greatest. In my mind, what happened was Dexter came out. It was pretty popular. Dexter reboomed to the point where kind of, oh hey, we're gonna make some spin-offs. The way I'm viewing it, it's exactly like Suits. If you've seen that show, Suits, was big when it first came out. Like I never saw it when it first came out, and then recently started getting more popular. And I'm like, okay, I'll watch the show. I watched the show, and now they made Suits LA, right? Because it just reboomed, and it's always awesome to see those original shows boom like that because I would rather take those spin-offs with like some of the OG cast and whatnot and explaining their characters more than like rebranding a whole new like show, but it's supposed to be like a spin-off off of that, if that makes sense. There's like shows that make spin-offs that like that kind of like just don't connect to it really well and it just doesn't work. But going back to Dexter, Dexter's 8 seasons long. Like I said, the eighth one left room for interpretation, but was kind of a flop. And then what they did was they made Dexter New Blood. Now, Dexter New Blood was pretty awesome because that's when you get to see Harrison, Dexter's son, like grow up and meet his dad and all this stuff. And it's only like 1 season long. Like they didn't try to make it 2, 3, 4 seasons, which is awesome because they kind of left it. They left it where they can make another spinoff off of that, but it wasn't like they were beating that, like being a dead horse, if you will. They just kept it 1 season. Let's just wrap everything up in 1 season. They did pretty well at that, I'll be honest. And then they made Dexter Original Sin. They did phenomenal at that show. At first watching it, you would be like, oh, what's up with all these, Detective Harry or Dexter's dad, like doing all his flashbacks. But at the last 2 episodes, and I just saw them last night. My buddy and I watched it last night. The 2 episodes basically summed up why they showed all this past stuff, and it honestly they did an amazing job at it. I just can't talk enough about the Original Sin because especially Patrick Gibson. Patrick Gibson did a phenomenal job. I was trying to think of his name. Patrick Gibson did a phenomenal job playing Dexter. But I'll get into that more later. Then they have his resurrection. Because where New Blood ended, Dexter's son shoots Dexter because he became a monster, or he sees him unraveling as a monster when he's supposed to have this code. And so and his son really essentially can't handle this. At first, it looked like he could, and that was going to be wild. I mean, imagine a father's son just killing people or killing bad guys. Absolute insane. But But his son was like, nah, this can't fly. Shoots his dad, and obviously the sheriff cop, she was on to him. That's why. I mean, they did a great job at it. Dexter's dating the sheriff. She finds out who he is. Sheriff then's like, hey, you're going to jail. He kills an innocent person who does not fit the code, whatever. And Harrison's like, nope, you gotta stop that. So he tries to kill him. And it ends with him in a gurney getting taken to the morgue. But obviously, Resurrection comes out, so obviously he's alive, whatever. I'm excited to see the show. It comes out, I think, roughly summer 2025. Obviously, Michael C. Hall is in it, and I'm curious if some of the OG cast from the original Dexter is going to be in it because it showed, Detective Sergeant now, Batista in the series and stuff like that. So I hope we see some original cast members, which would have been awesome. Like I would love to see Masuka in it because he's super underrated, and pretty funny. But those are the 3 current shows, and then there's going to be Resurrection coming out possibly summer 2025. There's no you should watch the original Dexter series first, I would say. Then you could watch New Blood and you could watch Original Sin. I mean, theoretically speaking, you could watch Original Sin first because it builds up to Dexter, But it's kind of cool because if you watch Dexter first, kind of like what Star Wars did, like doing the flip flop switcheroo, if you will, Dexter, you're going to see all these characters and see like some flashbacks. It's just not as in detail as Original Sin for obvious reasons. But you're going to see some flashbacks and be like, oh, I wonder how, Brian Moser and him grew up, which is Dexter's brother, real brother. So it leaves you thinking as to how these people meet, come together, grow up together, how they act. Because I'm not gonna lie, when my buddy and I watched the last two episodes, especially me, like I was mind blown on how Harry and Brian like knew each other and how the whole interaction went down. Because in all honesty, if they didn't know each other, it would have gone down a whole different route. If I had to rank them, if I had to rank those three shows out so far, easily Dexter, the OG series, number one spot. Sleeeky rating, number one spot, without a doubt. Because even though the 8th season was kind of a flop, and some of them like did okay, like it still had an amazing, amazing like cast. They did a great job, and it's the original, right? Like you can never mess with the original, only because the fact that they just talk about so much and they go through so much in details, right? Like how Dexter like gets his code and how he kills these bad guys. He makes hiccups along the way. He tries to fix it. Deb finds out. It's a whole thing. Um, but they just do a phenomenal job at that. And then honestly, as much as I like New Blood about how seeing his son grow up and they do this thing together and he tries to get to know his son, which is kind of wholesome because in the original series he really doesn't get to know him because he's like a baby when all this stuff happens. I'm gonna have to give it to Original Sin. Patrick Gibson did a phenomenal job as playing Dexter. And Original Sin, and I was talking about that last night. Original Sin touched on some key points that Dexter show did, but they it's like a callback, right? A very good example is when like Harry finds Dexter and Brian in the shipping container. They reenacted that scene perfect how the original show did it, right? So, Harry running in, grabbing him, walking out, telling them to get in there and all that kind of stuff. They did a phenomenal job just reenacting some things, right? Or how the minor things, right? Like where Dexter in the show, he spins in his chair. In the Original Sin with Patrick Gibson, he spins in his chair like the exact. I mean, they did a great job. So I honestly think I have to put Original Sin over New Blood. Plus, if you know me, I am a huge fan of backstories. I think movies and shows that do a ton in backstory is very interesting. It's different usually, and it explains so much. Some people don't like a lot of backstory because it's slow or it takes a while, but I think that stuff's important because it helps build the character and understand the character as to why they are the character. With Original Sin, not only do you get that stuff, but you start to understand what characters you're gonna like. Why you like the characters you do and why you don't like the characters you do in Original Sin that are in Dexter, right? Because not all characters in Dexter are in New Blood, but most of the characters you're gonna see in Original Sin are in Dexter, if that makes sense. And I'll go over my like top 5 characters. There's really no specific rank to these characters, and there's a ton of characters on here, and like I can't stress enough that I really do like a lot of them. They're not like your typical shows where like they just have characters that are fill-ins and it's just kind of annoying dealing with them, right? But there are characters on here that I like a lot, so that's why I put them in my top 5, if you will. But I don't have like a specific rank system for them, like a Sleeeky rank system for them, only because they just are good and bad in their own different ways. So I'm gonna kind of go through them now. All right, so like one of the top 5 characters I would probably say is Deborah Morgan, aka Dexter's like adopted sister. You see her in all 3 shows, different stages, right? She's doing her thing, right? She's working at the department with Dexter, Miami Metro to be exact, in the homicide section. And then in New Blood, she's cooked, bro. She's gone. She's a ghost, but she plays as a ghost, which is kind of cool, right? It's a different atmosphere because Dexter, always thinks about his sister regardless of the scenario, right? And then same with Original Sin. She's like younger in this. Because overall she's younger than Dexter. Anyway, so like she plays like a little bit younger of a teen, like in high school in the show, which is they did a really great job on casting that. But I think Deb, she's very intelligent. She's great at her job. Um, so if you watch my TikToks, I mentioned she's slightly overrated. I did that because even though she's very intelligent, she's very, she's great at her job being a cop. She swears a lot. Now I know that sounds kind of like stupid, but like you don't understand. Rather than doing the typical normal thing, right? Like, for example, in Original Sin, she walks into the hospital room with one of the guys is like, oh, sorry, am I interrupting? She has to like drop a swear word. It's just constant. Like she has to drop the F bomb so much. Like, I mean, it literally must be like in her script, obviously, that like she has to drop it like every other sentence. Maybe that makes her great. I don't know. I get that's her character, but I just don't care for it. You know what I mean? And I will say she is an attention seeker. Like if Dexter's not wanting to do what she wants to do, oh, she throws a hissy fit. And like, bro, you're like 20 some 30 years old in the original show. Like your character's supposed to be a lot older. Like really you're going to have like a little fit because Dexter doesn't want to go on one of your dates that's just going to fail. But then, lastly, she gets very emotional, but that's a good thing. I feel like getting emotional. I mean, she gets very emotional in the show. She sleeps with Lundy. She sleeps with Quinn. She dates them all. She's dating a CI. Like, bro. I mean, she's engaged to a serial killer. That's a whole thing within itself. But I can't really necessarily blame for that because Brian Moser is like literally a psychopath and he just knows how to manipulate people. But yeah, I mean, I like her a lot. And like I said in my TikTok series, she's slightly overrated. I mean, those are some of the things I mentioned. Because it does in the show, it shines a lot of light on her because she's obviously one of the main characters, but it's just a bit much. Again, I do like her as a character. I'm not trying to say I don't. She's not my favorite. All right, but then the next one we're going to talk about is Sergeant Dokes. Now, he plays the guy. I forget the actor's name, but regardless though, Sergeant Dokes, phenomenal role. The actor played him in a phenomenal way. He's hilarious. He honestly is a good cop, and Dexter even points out in the show, and he's only in the one show, or at least he might be in Original Sin if they make a second season, possibly. But in the original show, he's in it for a brief stint, okay, because he kind of gets, he gets cooked. But Sergeant Dokes, he's a really good cop. And he is the only one, and Dexter points out, he is the only one who can see him how he is. He thinks he's a weirdo. He knows there's like, he borderline thinks he's the Bay Harbor Butcher, but he doesn't know that just yet, right? He says some like off the wall lines.
I should have seen it before. The fake smile, the donuts. You don't even walk like a normal person. You glide like a fucking lizard on ice.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just hilarious. Like, and then obviously, like, the surprise, everyone knows that meme. That was Sergeant Dokes who said that. But his downfall, and I don't know if this makes him a hypocrite, but he judges everyone like he doesn't have his own demons, right? Like, bro literally whacked a dude. I wouldn't say that dude's innocent, the one from Haiti. I'm not saying he's innocent by any means, but he just like straight up completely murdered him, and he's like, oh, it was justified. What are you talking about? And it wasn't. And Batista knew it wasn't. It's just a whole thing, right? Like he judges everyone, about doing stuff wrong. Like he judges Deb, judges Dexter, judges, but he judges everyone, but like really himself. Overall, though, I think he is a great character. Another one too. I'll put her in the top just because she is a good cop, but kind of really friggin' annoying. Is Lieutenant LaGuardia. The actress who plays her, phenomenal. Phenomenal job. I mean, obviously you could pick up a theme here. Most of them are just doing a great job playing these roles. In Original Sin, obviously it's a different actress, phenomenal job. And then in Dexter, phenomenal job. She's not a new blood because she gets cooked as well. But, she's intelligent. She's smart. Well, intelligent, smart, same thing, duh. But when I mean intelligent, she knows how to play the political system, right? She knows how, she got ranks up super fast just because she just knows the in and outs. She knows how to play the game. She's smart because she is a good cop. Like, I'm not denying that. She figures out eventually, after the emotions are set aside, that Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher. But she, Dexter does like some Uno reverse cards on her, and she gets all upset, and she's figuring out ways to capture him, whatever. She lets out murderer just to try to capture him. Like, I mean, that's a crazy bait and switch. That's a crazy move to be like, hey, we're going to set you free because I know Dexter's going to come after you, and then we're going to catch him. That's wild to do, too. But, her downfall, in my mind, she's very politically motivated. Like, almost so much so, like, it's annoying, right? Like, in the original Sin, she does a great job, but she ruffle the feathers, if you will, so much that it's genuinely, like, annoying. Right, like she just can't be a cop and then be a friend. She has to be like a cop, and then she's like, "Oh, what's the next big thing that's gonna make me?" Oh, why did you like and that's an original Sin, and then in the original show, Dexter, she's just like, "Oh, that was my case. I should have done the PR press for that." Like, it's just so much, dude. Like, she is so politically driven. It's insane. Some people might think it's a good thing, but I think it's kind of annoying because she's supposed to be a cop, supposed to be arresting bad guys, doing the thing, saving the people. But she's doing it only just to rank up or what have you. She goes against like the captain completely in Original Sin, goes against the captain completely in Dexter. I mean, it's just absolutely wild. But then, the way I'm picturing it, she'd be the type of coworker that she's smart, so you want to ask her, but if you ask her, you're going to get judged. Like, she judges so hard, such a judgy person that's actually crazy in Original Sin. And then in the original Dexter show too, she just doesn't like Deborah Morgan from the rip. Even in Original Sin, like, that's one thing I liked about it, is that they even showed her being rude to Deb. And she was just like literally a high school student, just asking questions. And LaGuerta was just rude then too. I kind of like how they did that relationship because they don't have the greatest relationship, both of them. But yeah, Lieutenant LaGuerta and then eventually Captain LaGuerta, she is the type of person like, oh, hey, I want to go ask her because she would know how to do my work. But then you're just going to get judged for it the whole time, so you're afraid to. You know what I mean? You would rather go with someone who half knows rather than go to her because it's just going to be annoying to deal with the comments she has to make. Like, is this not even worth it, bro? And then lastly, I have a little list over here. The last one I'm definitely going to talk about is Dexter Morgan. Obviously, kind of cliche to say that the main character is your favorite character, but I honestly do like him a lot. He was played by Michael C. Hall and Patrick Gibson, both in Original Sin, Dexter, and New Blood. Patrick Gibson for Original Sin, for obvious reasons. He's younger in the show. I mean, the character played by those actors, they did a phenomenal job. I can't stress that enough. I said that about 20 times in this video. All the callbacks they did, the wink, the grin, the creepy grin, the introduction, like literally the theme song introduction. They just did a phenomenal job with Dexter's role. And it shows about his character being built up from like controlling his passenger to killing people, following the code and whatnot. He defies the odds of your typical serial killer. Like obviously TV show, not real. God, I hope it's not real, but like TV show. But then like in real life, in the real world, when you had your real serial killers like Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, that kind of stuff, they obviously didn't have a code in the sense of, hey, I'm only going to kill bad guys that defied the system because they hurt innocents. Like, at least Dexter Morgan has a code. Granted, he's still killing people. Like, he's still, like, people are getting cooked, but he's killing at least, like, the right people. You know what I mean? He's killing the people that are murderers and like do all this crazy stuff. Captain killing kids in Original Sin, that's wild. Dexter Morgan is a phenomenal character because, again, it defies your typical serial killer. He has a code. He follows that code to the T. He tries to, like, dude, Original Sin showed us how his mom was killed. I mean, they did that in the original Dexter series too, but not as in detail and not as graphic. If you were to see that stuff, granted, he kind of couldn't remember. In the original Dexter show, he does figure out what happened, and like it hits him like a train. You would be literally like, the trauma is actually insane what these kids went through. Like, legitimately crazy. It's no wonder Brian turned out the way he was. I mean, if you saw your mom chopped off and you set in a shipping container with all this blood and whatever, I can't even fathom that, to be honest. But regardless, though, Harry was so smart as a cop. Like, Harry's one of my top characters. I just didn't put him in top 5 just because he's there, but he isn't there. I don't know. I think that Dexter, like, follows that code at least. He does a great job. He's just trying to control his urges. Now, obviously, downfalls, he's still a serial killer. Like, there's no way around it. Like, at some point, he's going to get caught. And we see in New Blood, he gets caught Granted, it's wild that he gets caught by like a local sheriff, but not the whole Miami Metro. But maybe it was a different set of eyes. She had all the pieces given. She had all the pieces given to her, and she could be a great cop. And she was dating him, so kind of like she could see the inner emotion side of him, which is like extra nice to have. But regardless, though, eventually he's gonna get caught, and he kind of did get caught. But in the original show, there was a couple of moments where the dark passenger—that's what Dexter calls it—his dark passenger. There was a couple moments where it just was too much for him, right? Like he couldn't control it. Like remember when, if you remember, Brian Moser came back as a spirit and he like goes to that gas station, distracts that girl to get the gun, and he's just shooting rounds off at like Dark Passenger completely took over. I mean, absolutely grabbed the wheel, started driving. But on top of that too, he kills an innocent. He kills a couple innocent people, right? The photographer wasn't him who did it; it was his assistant. Obviously, he kills. Not granted, controversial, but he kills the one deputy in New Blood who had no reason to get at the coach. But at that point, it's fight or flight, and Bro chose to fight and then flight. There's certain points there's going to be cracks, right? As strong as the code is, the Harry's code, there were going to be cracks in it, and there were. He had kind of some moments where Dark Passenger took over and he couldn't control it. Like when he started dating Lila and he just started getting rage. She was like, oh my gosh, she was terrible for him. I mean, she did a great job. Different than Rita type of experience, so I could get why that drew attraction to him. She accepted him for who he was, all that stuff, but she brought the Dark Passenger, and Dark Passenger was completely taken over. He was doing some wild stuff, pulling fire alarms. Dude was unstoppable. But nevertheless, those are my top 5 characters. Overall, I'm gonna give a Sleeeky rating on the whole series. I'm gonna give it at least. I mean, it's a 9 out of 10 for me. My only downfall, the only 1 point loss I would give it on the downfall is that Dexter, near the end, like I said, like the last couple seasons, it started dropping a little. Like they had introduced some characters that made things unique. Deb kind of went wild, when she found out when Dexter was the behavior butcher. Like they did some couple really awesome things, but it did start to trend down a little bit. And I think they realized that. This might be kind of controversial, but I hope they do make a second season of Original Sin. Okay, because New Blood, I get 1 season, that's fine. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. New Blood moves up, I think it's like upstate New York, if I remember correctly. Dates the sheriff, she finds out who he is, he gets arrested, he escapes, Harrison kills him. All this stuff. Like, it was kind of wholesome throughout the whole show in 1 season, which they, like I said, they did phenomenal. I get why that ends in 1 season. And then they start Resurrection. Okay, now he's on the run type stuff, or he's developing a new life. We don't know. But Original Sin, there's so much they can build on that, right? Like, for example, in Original Sin, we haven't met Dokes yet. We obviously see La Passion, a.k.a. Sergeant, but then Detective Batista. We see a lot of the characters in there, but we don't get Captain Matthews. We don't get Dokes. I would just love to see some of these people in action. So I wouldn't mind 1 more season of Original Sin. I wouldn't mind seeing, like, okay, these are how all the characters are in here, and it just sets up like that, and they call it a day, and then it goes into Dexter. Because technically speaking, it's wild to me Dokes was like treating him like that, because Dexter, he's the more senior guy. He's been there way longer than Dokes, or at least according to Original Sin. Like, dude was in there from the rip. He was in there from the start. But yeah, I would like to see that. But overall, I'm giving this like a 9 out of 10. Unfortunately, there's really not that many shows or movies or whatever that's going to be a perfect 10 out of 10. There's always like some type of, nothing's perfect in this world. But phenomenal job. I recommend the whole series. I'm excited to see Resurrection. If you guys like this video, drop a like, drop a follow, please. I appreciate the channel a lot. Comment below if you agree, disagree on, giving this a 9 out of 10, or if you think Original Sin was overrated, bad. I don't know. I thought it was phenomenal. I think, like I said, I think it's better than New Blood, but I think New Blood's still great. So if you think New Blood's better, shoot that comment. I mean, you do you. But yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next. Take care, guys. See ya.